All right, so today I do want to take some time to cover what we expect when it comes to writing lesson plans for the class. Writing these lesson plans is a very important part of developing your skills as a teacher and getting ready to get into that field and work with your students. So at the forefront of everything we do, we want to go ahead and bring our attention back to these four questions. What do we want all students to know and be able to do? How will we know they learn it? How will we respond when some students do not learn? And the last one, how will we extend the learning for students who are already proficient? So again, that last question there, that is with that extension piece. That's going to be looking at students who are advanced, who are high achievers, who are mastering that objective and then moving on to the next phase of their learning. With respect to question number 3, this is going to be where your remediation comes in. And how are you going to address the needs of those students who need that extra help to show that mastery? Number 2, that answer should always be some form of assessment. You want to be able to address what it is that they should have learned from your lessons and activities. And the only way you're going to know that is through giving some kind of a formative or summative assessment. Those each have their own place. And the first question here, this is going to involve your learning objective. With respect to whatever subject you're teaching and whatever grade level you're teaching, that first question is very important. That's the basis for your entire lesson plan, and that is going to be your learning objective. So one thing I do want to say is that all the files you are using to write this lesson plan, these are the property of Kennesaw State University. We are using this format that the university has produced, and just so you understand, like, this format belongs to the university. We would ask that you do not share that or potentially give that away to anyone that's not part of the university. So one thing I will say, and this is just for me, for my class, that every lesson plan you write, I want it to have a STEM component in some way. That does not mean that it needs to be a STEM lesson plan, but it needs to be integrated with STEM. So an example of this would be is if you're teaching a social studies lesson, and within that lesson you have the students engineering something of some nature. For example, just a very quick, crude example here would be if you're learning about the indigenous Americans, the Native Americans, and perhaps like some of their dwellings in which they lived, you might have the students, engineer that structure using some similar materials what they had access to. But that's just something I want to go ahead and explain. By STEM, remember that's going to be your science, technology, engineering, or math. And I put here and or because there are some activities where you can really integrate a lot of these different things together with your primary objective. So where are you going to find those objectives? Well, to do that, you are going to go to georgiastandards.org. We call this the DOE suitcase. And when you are here, you are going to see it's kind of organized according to separate subjects. The ones that I want you to primarily focus on are going to be the ones for your science, language arts, math, and social studies. And whatever grade you choose, you can actually choose anything from K all the way down to 12th grade if you wish. My suggestion for you, though, is to keep that focus on K through 6 between those grade levels. And again, if you are choosing math, if you're choosing science, then that already carries that STEM requirement. So you don't really have to do anything else with that besides using that one objective. But if you are using language arts and social studies, I do want you to integrate in some way with STEM. There's a lot of opportunities there. You might have to stretch your mind in some different directions to be able to do that effectively. but I do want you to have some kind of integration with STEM. So the question comes up, can we use AI? What are the parameters of using AI? And my advice to you is always absolutely. When a principal comes in to observe you in your classroom, when an assistant principal comes in to observe you, they're not really concerned with where you got your lesson from. What they care about is that the students are engaged, the students are learning, the students are meeting that learning objective. And so whether you get that from a neighboring teacher, whether you get that from a resource like a book or a website, or whether you create that on your own, or whether you use AI to help you create that on your own, it does not matter. What matters is the students are learning, that you're piloting, facilitating that learning activity for the students, and that it's a good lesson, that it's directed towards the needs of your learners. That's what's essential in this practice. That's what matters. So when it comes to using AI, my answer there is absolutely. You may use AI. However, be very cautious of over-relying on this. You should not have AI do the work for you. You should use AI to do the work. Now let's think about that. Those are two very different things. Using AI to do the work for you can be very problematic. Using AI to help you do the work is different. And the one thing I do want to say about this is that AI can sometimes be wrong. So when you're using AI, you're not going to copy and paste things from AI into your lesson plan format. You're going to look at what AI has, and you're going to think about, okay, what do I need to change here? What do I need to alter to make this appropriate for my learners? And so I definitely want to encourage you to use AI as a tool, but at the same time, I want you to customize this. And the reason that you need to customize this is for a variety of different criteria and different factors that play into what your students need. But the thing to really keep in mind is that you have your own style and your students have their own needs. So again, you're going to capitalize on your strengths and you're going to address specifically what those students in your class precisely need from you to maximize their potential and to get as far as they can get with your lesson. So one site that I do strongly recommend is going to be Magic School. If you want to use those AI tools, there is a lot here that could be utilized to assist you. There is actually a lesson plan generator, but again, you are not over relying on what the AI does for you. You're using it to get the work done. You're not having to do the work for you. But here, what you would do is on the site, if you just scroll down, you're going to find a little place where you can click that is going to have lesson plans that you can generate. You need to give it the learning objective that you've chosen, and you can go from there. Again, though, we're not copying and pasting. We are going to use that to help us rewrite that to meet the needs of our learners and to capitalize on our strengths. The vocabulary list generator is a great tool to use as well. Having your students focus on that vocabulary is just a great teaching strategy, and it's going to assist your students in acquiring the content they need. So as you open the Kennesaw State lesson plan format, the first thing you're going to see here is just some various descriptors for the information that's needed. You are also going to see there that there are words, statements that are in italics. What you're going to do with this is you're going to simply highlight and delete the italics as it says in the text there next to the note. So you're going to use a template, type directly into it, but you're deleting all the italicized explanatory remarks as it states. And again, as you do this, you're going to have a different form for each one. Your name, make sure you put the school, give your lesson plan a title, and you do not have to be overly creative. This is just something that you can use to refer to it so you know which lesson it is. So do not stress yourself out about having some elaborate, creative, catchy title. That's not something we need. The central focus of the lesson, basically, what are they doing? What are you trying to get them to accomplish with your lesson plan? What are they going to be constructing? What are they going to be making? What are they going to be synthesizing? And the theme here, you want to have an essential question. The essential question is just going to be what they should ask themselves in their mind. For example, if your lesson was on multiplying two-digit numbers, the question might be, how do we multiply two-digit numbers? Again, you're not overthinking this. You're going to keep this simple. This is your beginning phase of writing lesson plans, so do not make it hard for yourself. All right, student learning goals. These you can copy and paste. So as you go to the Georgia DOE, you can directly take whatever you have there. You simply copy and paste into this. You're not writing your own objectives. You are taking those objectives from the website. So this is something that I would just say, just copy and paste directly into that. Prior academic knowledge. This is what your students need to know before doing this lesson. So what they need to know before beginning. Okay, so get a great example. If you're going to do a lesson on how to multiply 25 times 36, they first need to know how to multiply 5 times 6. It's too much of a jump to have them go ahead and try this goal here if they have not mastered that prerequisite knowledge first. Misunderstandings, these are misconceptions. So what is some wrong thinking that students might have in their mind? So if you're teaching science and you're teaching a lesson on, say, acceleration, many people think that acceleration means going faster, which that is one type of acceleration, but scientifically defined, acceleration is also slowing down or coming to a stop. That is a type of acceleration. Not many people believe that, but that's a common misconception we need to address. Here you're going to kind of plan out how much time you are going to spend on each phase of this. So assume that with your time that you're going to have in your lesson, you are going to have about 1 hour. So that's an assumption that I want you to begin with. Now, within your specific teaching field, you might have an hour and 10 minutes, you might have 45 minutes, and it all depends on where you're teaching and which environment you're teaching and which grade level. But here, you just want to basically map out your time of how much you're going to spend. I am going to go ahead and say that the largest portion, the meat of everything you're doing, the central focus is going to be this part right here. Okay, your direct instruction when you're teaching students should be a much smaller portion of the lesson than when the students are doing the work themselves. They're doing the activity where you're supervising, facilitating. But that is, all of these are essential. You need to have all these present. And I'm not going to give you hard numbers right now. I just want to kind of see what you come up with on your own. However, I am going to say that you need to have all of these aspects as the structure of your lesson. Now, this is where you have students that might be ESOL, students that might be gifted, students that might be qualified for special education services, 504 plans, anything that's going to give them some kind of a need that we might not have with our regular ed students. Now, I will say that it's very common for a large portion of your class to qualify for one or multiple of these different categories. And we want to make sure that we are making sure that we're supporting those students that have those different needs in the classroom. And just how is your lesson going to address their needs? What ifs? What if things do not go as planned? So you want to have contingency plans that are kind of set up here. Again, this should probably be maybe 2 different adjustments. So if your lesson is really heavily encompassing technology, what are you going to do if the internet is down that day or if something goes wrong? What are you going to do if, like, let's say you're using scissors and a student accidentally gets cut? So what are some different contingencies you have in place? I would like for you to have at least 3 things that you can find that could go wrong with this lesson that you're going to address. 3 theoretical principles and or research-based practice. What research are you using? What facts are you using about how students learn in your lesson? Someone great to look up that as we're kind of approaching this, look up the name Marzano and see what his research says about how students learn best. Another person to address will be Dufour. Look at what they have said about how students learn best and apply that right here. Materials, these are going to be what you need. Basically, these are going to be objects such as construction paper, scissors, glue. If you're doing a STEM lesson that involves programming robots, put that in there. Many of your lessons are going to involve computers, especially if students are doing their work online. So you want to have essentially everything that you're going to need for that lesson. Academic language. What language function do you want students to develop from this lesson? So think about the words analyze, interpret, argue, evaluate, create, classify. I want you to go ahead and reference Bloom's taxonomy as you complete this phase of your lesson plan. If you just look up this term, you're going to see all kinds of verbs that you could use for your lesson plan. What must students understand in order to be intellectually engaged in the lesson? So what do they need to know to participate? Okay, and that's kind of going back to the prerequisite knowledge again. You don't want students to be bored. You don't want students to be disinterested in what you're doing. You want them to be engaged. You want them to be involved. You want this to matter to your kids. Last one here, what content-specific terms? So guys, this is going to be vocabulary, right? What words do students need to support the learning and basic objective for this lesson? So think about what terms you want them to know as they engage in your lesson. What should they come away with a better understanding of? That vocabulary piece is huge. All right. And again, you're just going to look at these questions, answer those. You're going to remove the italics there, highlight the italics, type over. Words like syntax and discourse, we're not going to really focus on that right now. But just think about how you're supporting your students here. Then you want to look at like different ways they need to use language, especially for language arts lessons. How are they going to use language? A couple of words here are fine to put. You don't need to have a long explanation. And this one you can kind of leave blank because you have not worked with these kids specifically in that classroom yet. All right, assessment, how are you going to assess the students? Now, you guys know a lot about CFAs and CSAs. These are not new things to you. But what other ways could you assess their learning if that's something you want to do? Okay. Resources, if you do use an external resource, make sure you mention this. But any materials that you're going to need for the lesson, if you make a PowerPoint, if you have notes, if you have a worksheet that you're creating, anything of that nature, please make sure that you link it into your lesson plan document or that you provide me with a copy of it. And so let's just kind of take a second to address those ideas regarding STEM. Here I have just a few simple ideas of things you could do if you're combining language arts and STEM. So here we have writing a narrative but using scientific observation and inquiry, right? So you see here's the activity, just kind of like briefly mentioned, and this is mentioning that STEM component. So here we have that language arts and STEM that are combined with this one. Feel free to stop and read that. Another one, you're going to have engineering design with reading comprehension. So, they mentioned a story. There's a story mentioned here about, with a book, and students can kind of discuss that. And then they're going to be looking at using the engineering design process while using technical vocabulary. All right, so that's a great one. And then we have inventing a character using simple machines. Here they have to learn about simple machines, the lever, the pulley, the wheel, and the axle. And then they're going to create a fictional character who uses a machine to solve some kind of a problem. So this is great. They have written expression, and at the same time, they're actually showing a greater understanding of how simple machines function and how they make work easier. And just one thing I want to say as you're starting this, do not get frustrated, do not feel stressed, do not feel overwhelmed. We are all aware that this is new to you. This is something that you have not done before. This is practice. It is perfectly fine to, to not have the greatest lesson plan ever with your first attempt. So this is something that you're just getting started with, and I just want to encourage you to be kind to yourself, to encourage yourself, and understand that this is your first time doing this. So this is just meant to help, meant to have you get some practice to initiate that whole lesson planning process. And I'm looking forward to excellent work from all of you. But again, remember that this is something that you're very new to, and this will not be the greatest lesson plan you ever write over the course of your career, but it's the first one that I want to see from you, and I'm looking forward to good work.